Hey there, it's Melissa Brunetti, and welcome to the Mind Your Own Karma podcast. Hey there, Karma crew. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Mind Your Own Karma, the Adoption Chronicles. Today, I have a special guest. He is an adoptee. Jean-Pierre Weingarten has led a rich, challenging, and exciting life, beginning with showing up on the planet in Paris, France. At 6 years old, his parents divorced. His mother remarried to an American diplomat who whisked his family around the world. And at 12 years of age, he was adopted by his stepfather. Once out of high school, Jean-Pierre planted his roots in the San Francisco Bay Area, immersing himself in the hospitality industry in restaurant and catering kitchens. He's also a builder, a poet, an SEO specialist, an energy healer, and a certified Smgi guide. Being of service to others has been the underlying theme of his life. Here is my interview with Jean-Pierre. So we're welcoming Jean-Pierre to the show today. Hi, Jean-Pierre.
Hi, Melissa. It's really great to be here. Thanks for
I
having me.
am so glad that you're telling your story because it's different than most adoption stories.
Yeah,
It's not the typical, baby, infant adoption story, and we'll get into the details about that. But let's just start by discussing what it was like in your family growing up before you were adopted.
sure. My parents, who were both American, were expatriated to Paris, France, which is where I was born and raised for the first six years of my life. And my father was an artist, a painter, a jeweler,
Mm.
and my mom, she was pretty much a homemaker, but she also did some jobs, various jobs, and one of them was she was working at the American Embassy in Paris, uh, and eventually that's where she met my stepdad, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
So I grew up speaking French only, even though my mom spoke, both my parents spoke French fluently, like French people.
Mm-hmm.
Really discern that, really couldn't discern that she was an American. Uh, I mean, certainly over time she was able to learn, get the accent and so forth. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, they're both Francophiles. They loved France, and there's so my parents, my so growing up, I spoke French, and I went to kind of the equivalent of kindergarten, um,
Mm-hmm.
and most of my friends were French, of course, and I used to play a lot in the. I lived in the sixth arrondissement or district in Paris, right near the Gardens of Luxembourg,
Mm.
and those beautiful gardens that
Yeah.
I used to play in all the time. It was close to my home, so I would, in those days I could go to the park and not feel like I was, I could go by myself,
Right. Yeah.
right? And people looked out for each other. Um, so yeah, so I have some memories of what it was like to grow up in our apartment. I have a brother who's 2 years younger
Mm-hmm.
than myself, um, and he and I, we spent a lot of time in the house. We also had a Portuguese nanny in the times when both my parents were working, and she would kind of help around the house and so forth. So I don't remember her name or anything, but I remember her her energy, her essence, that she was really taking care of us.
Yeah. So
Um,
it sounds like you had a great childhood. I mean,
yeah,
everything was good.
yeah, and
Eh,
then what I noticed, Melissa, was that there were there were a lot of confrontations, arguments between my parents,
mm,
and I could hear them in the other room, uh, you know,
yeah.
stomping, shouting, you know,
Mm,
arguing, and that was very distressing to me,
right.
uh, very traumatic. And so I had this balloon, this toy clown made of plastic that kind of like wobbles. You know, it's got
Hmm.
sand on the bottom.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
used to punch
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I kind
Oh,
of,
wow. Yeah.
kind of,
Took
and
it up.
without even realizing that I got my yayas out
Yeah.
as a result of that. Um, then things started to shift. Um, and before I knew it, um, there was this strange man in our lives,
Yeah.
and so that was at 6. And then all of a sudden, I'm like whisked away from Paris with this new man, my mom and my brother, and he was a foreign service officer stationed at the embassy in Paris, and that's, as I said earlier, that's where my mom met him and
Hmm.
fell in love and so forth. So, and I have a feeling, I don't know for sure, but I think they might have had an affair while she was still married to
Yeah.
father, and um, I don't know that for sure, but I suspect,
Possibility. Yeah.
yeah, those kind of things happen. And
Yeah.
so I all of a sudden we were in Manila, the Philippines, because my stepfather was assigned to Vietnam. And this was 1968, mind you, so it was in the height of the
Hmm.
Vietnam conflict. And he was there as a civilian on behalf of the State Department. So we were in Manila because we weren't going to be in country because that was too much of a danger for,
Yeah.
for us to be there. But we were in Manila to be close to him. So my whole world just shifted from, the streets of Paris to this warm, lush area in the Philippines, and I learned English there.
Okay.
But I was a troubled kid, and I kind of was in my own world and really had a hard time, And I was at the time I just have glimpses of remembering that being in this bewilderment and kind of going on automatic and doing silly things that in class, and teachers would scratch their heads. It's like, what's wrong
Yeah.
with this kid, right?
Did you
I
wonder where your dad went? What were you told? Anything?
oh no,
Nothing?
it's almost as if and maybe that's something that I can, if it feels necessary for me to explore, to go back in time. Uh,
Yeah.
but it just, he was gone. We were whisked away. We were in the Philippines, and that was that.
What
And
did you think of this new man? I mean,
I didn't
how'd
trust him.
you didn't?
No, no, I felt like he was an interloper. He
Hmm.
uh, was there to take my mom away from me,
Yeah.
right? So
So did you ever form a relationship with him at all? Or it sounds like he
my
was gone, but
with my father.
with your stepfather.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, there was an uneasy relationship. He wasn't necessarily a bad man. It's just he just wasn't. He was more invested in my mother,
Mm,
and then so fast forward to when I was 9, my sister's born, and she's a union of my stepfather and my mother.
right.
I remember at 9, I was having a really hard time with my mom being pregnant. I mean, I was depressed. I mean, they sent me to a child psychiatrist, complete with the whole Rorschach charts, and
Yeah.
it's like, I said, well, okay. But he said I remember what one thing the therapist did say. He said, you may feel some emotion when your mother's actually, about to give birth in the hospital. And then sure enough, and I wonder
Mm,
sometimes if that was just like a suggestion, or but it's
Right.
really I did feel that I was
Yeah.
heartbroken, and I felt a sense of betrayal.
Yeah. So how was that when they brought your sister home? And did you ever, how was the relationship with her? Did you feel different because she was biological between the two of them? And did you,
Yeah, I did. I didn't. I've never. We've always had a sense of civility with each other over the years, and you know, we we never really got close.
Mhm.
And I mean, you know me a little bit. I'm gregarious. I've always been that way. Uh, and she's more, shut in,
Yeah.
shut in, closed up.
Hmm.
Um, Not as outgoing. She was very defensive sometimes in her life. I've noticed, and my brother and I would tease her, and as brothers do as kids.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, I've never really got close to her. Uh,
Yeah.
and so when she was born, I didn't. Um, it was really hard to relate to her because I was just in shock and just felt, oh my God, you know, another.
Yeah. So you
So
were
I
already kind of struggling. And so
yeah,
after she was born, I mean, did that just kind of keep spiraling?
just kind of it stabilized, and I kind of just went off into my own world as
Mm.
that's been my go-to
Hmm.
pattern is to withdraw
Yeah.
and go within and just go into my own world. I
So
suppose that's
kind of backing up, what was it like leaving France, like your homeland? And like, I mean, how did that affect you?
I was terrified. I was terrified.
Yeah.
I felt like I was being ripped away. There was a heart. My heart was being ripped
Right.
under.
Because you're being taken from your family and your friends and everything you've ever known to a place that doesn't speak your language. And I mean, I can't imagine that, how that
And
would feel.
I don't even recall ever saying goodbye to my father.
Wow.
And then of course from that moment on, I never saw him again. I
Yeah.
you know I used to say, uh, "Oh, I never knew my father," and I was reminded, "Oh, yes, you did. He was there in the first 6 years.
Yeah.
You knew him. He knew you."
Did you ever wonder, like, why isn't he coming to find me or
Hell
as a
yes,
kid?
hell yes.
Yeah.
And I asked my
What
mother
happened to
about it.
him?
Yeah, I asked my mother about it, and she would give me, you know, vague answers. And well, I don't know where he is, and you know, you may want to ask him these. I mean, she wasn't going to be helpful
Right. Yeah.
helping me discover about him or where he was. And so in 1987 or 85 or 87, excuse me, my mom called me and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that your father actually." She never referred to him as my father. She always referred to him by his first name, Bert,
Oh.
which I did as well. So I
Mm.
got I got trained
Yeah.
to say that,
Yeah.
and I want to share just a quick story, which is amazing.
Sure.
I was um, Gina, my partner, and I and her friend of hers. We were sitting in a restaurant in Modesto, and uh, I was relating the story about my father and calling him Bert, and then Elizabeth says he doesn't like it when you call him that.
Mm.
Like, what? And so she was channeling that
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
moment in this restaurant at this table,
Wow.
and I was like, oh, I was like, wow. I mean, and there were tears in all our eyes, and he prefers you call him father.
Mm.
So moving forward from that point on, I called him father.
In that moment, did you realize that, wow, I was kind of programmed to,
Yeah, I was brainwashed
yeah.
to friends and family, friends who uh, friends who were mutual friends of my mom and my father, And it was interesting. I live in the Mill Valley. Currently, we live in the Mill Valley, and just above the hill was the um, house where two of some of my parents' oldest friends who knew them before I was even born. I'm
Oh,
60,
wow.
almost 62. Used to live up above where we live, which is interesting. Um, so, I used to come and visit here. I was four, speaking only French, and they knew my father. So my mom says, yeah, he passed away in 1985. So it was 2 years after the fact.
Oh, gosh.
And then my brother kind of researched where he was survived. He's survived by a wife, uh, Ira Spout Gore, who's an artist, down in,
Mm.
of all places, Fallbrook near San Diego.
Mm. Oh, wow.
I didn't even know he was in the States.
Yeah.
He'd lived in Puerto Vallarta. He's still, well, under Iris's um, ownership, or has a studio in Paris still that he worked
Oh.
out of. She
Mm.
still has it and rents it out. But yeah, I didn't know where he was because we also traveled. After the Philippines, we went back to the States to DC. Then we went to the former Yugoslavia for 3 years in
Oh, wow.
Volgograd. Then to back to DC. Then to Belgium for 4 years, where I spent my high school years.
Mm.
And came to San Francisco to go to San Francisco State. I was a math major at the time. And then I lived in Australia for a short stint.
Oh,
But so
man.
throughout all those travels, I kept asking about. I went to Paris and went to the restaurant. I was named after my two godfathers, who owned a famous brasserie in Paris
Mm.
called La Coupole, Jean and Pierre Lafont.
Oh,
I was
wow.
named with them in mind, and they knew my father really well. And in '86, Jean was still there and still alive, and I asked him about my father, and he said, oh, well, I haven't seen him in a long time,
Mm.
etc. So I just gave up. And
Yeah.
and so here's a little additional ingredient to this stew. Um, in '98, I went back east to talk to my parents and confront them about just asking some questions. I even forwarded the questions to them so they,
Hmm.
wouldn't be surprised by what I was going to ask. And one of the things that was revealed to me was that my father sent my brother and I gifts in which they were returned with our knowledge. And so that that was like, at the time I took it in, but I didn't feel that anger. I was surprised and shocked, and um, my stepdad said, well, we didn't want him to kind of hang around, and he would be all charming and all this bullshit
Wow.
that is totally has nothing to do with who he is. It's like, hey, if he's an asshole, I want to find out
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
Let me experience that.
Yeah.
So that was
So how
interesting.
did that feel like after you kind of processed that? Because I know for me, like my adoptive dad has passed as well. And, I felt weird, but I went to my half sister and I was like, can I don't care what it is. I just want one thing that was his. I don't care what it is. Could be nothing that's, I don't just something. I need something. So how did that feel like not receiving those gifts and
I felt completely betrayed. Felt anger, and I didn't really that didn't really manifest till much later.
Mhm.
Those feelings when because I buried those.
Yeah.
It was just I wasn't ready to handle it, and as you know, in trauma, there's a way in which we protect ourselves. Those parts protect us,
Mhm.
and until they're ready to be rescued and integrated. And so I felt, that it was quite a that was such a huge shock to me, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and so I imagine after that my father, of course, like, hell, I'm just going to give up. You'll
Yeah.
have to find me.
Right.
right? So, if he, I don't know. Well, I did talk to Iris, so I got some things, and I got, I actually also got some of his artwork,
Nice.
specifically his wedding ring, which is ironic,
Wow.
made of gold that he made, which I in turn gave. I don't like gold to wear.
Mm.
I'm a silver kind of guy, so I actually gifted it to my son who has
Mm. Nice.
it.
Wow.
So
So you do have some things.
I do. So I know I hear you when like yeah, it's like, and just to be in his house that he lived
Yeah.
in, speaking to
Yeah.
the friends that knew him.
I'm
I mean,
getting the chills right now.
oh
I
yeah, I was
know. I
looking.
know.
Well, what's interesting is at that time, 1987, when I went down to Fallbrook to visit with Iris, I found out I was going to be a father myself. And with a dear friend of mine who, and this was completely, it was a lover, it was completely unplanned.
Mm.
It-
Hmm.
well, from the human
Yeah.
standpoint, but from the
Yeah.
soul level,
Right.
it was definitely planned.
Yeah.
So I was dealing with a double whammy of finding out about my own father and also becoming one.
Wow.
So I remember I was working in a French restaurant in San Francisco when I came back from this trip. And I remember being in the kitchen, I felt nauseous because I was processing all this stuff of being a father and then finding out about my father. And I was just on overload. I mean, I actually
Yeah.
went to the bathroom and threw up because it was just a
Right.
lot to take in.
Wow. So let's talk about the adoption because at some point your stepfather adopted you. So let's talk
Yeah,
about that. How old
yeah.
were you and
I
what
was
happened?
so I was in my age of my majority, 12, and the adoption papers were signed when we were in Washington D.C. And my mother gave me the actual document, the original. Well, it's actually the copy. They keep the originals.
Hmm.
Government agencies always keep the originals of everything,
Right.
including birth certificates and so forth.
Yeah.
And so, and it was ex parte, which means that without um, the third party, i.e., my father, being present, or you know, and I don't know if they even bothered to figure out, try to reach out to him.
Hmm.
Um, but I felt like that was just yet another nail in the coffin of
Yeah.
my connection to my father,
Yeah.
and through his name, because my name has changed. So I'm Weingarten now. Before my name was Jean-Pierre Gore,
Mm.
as in Al Gore.
Have you ever thought about changing it back?
Yeah, I've vacillated between changing it back to Gore, leaving it at Weingarten, or coming up with something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's not that important to me in this moment. There was a time when I thought
Hmm.
I was going to go through the whole part,
Yeah.
say, you know,
Yeah.
screw you, I'm taking back my name, and it's of course within my right to do so. And
Yes.
but I've lost a lot of that charge around it,
Hmm.
and um, I just another story about like burying my identity. When I was in Washington, I was there in like uh, first grade and fourth, fifth, and sixth. And of course, you would think, thing with Jean-Pierre, especially on the East Coast, it'd be kind of, people kind of recognize it. But I got made, there was so much fun. I mean, people were making
Oh,
fun of
wow.
me to the point that I was just completely distressed by it. So I decided I'd just go by John.
Mm.
And then when I went to this amazing school in Washington D.C. Uh, and I remember looking at some of the yearbooks from it, and I noticed there I was, John Weingarten. So Jean Pierre Gore was completely gone.
Yeah. How did that feel? like seeing that in writing.
Well, when I realized what happened, I was just like, I, I was shocked. I was, and again, it was just that my trauma response to, you know, avoiding and to going into spaces that going within, and I just I don't want to cause any trouble. I just
Yeah.
fit in.
So you were 12 at the time of the adoption, and were you consulted at all, either by your parents or by a judge, or did anyone like ask you, is this what you want?
I don't recall. And again, there may have been. Well, my parents, said, yeah, well, we're gonna, your stepdad's gonna adopt you, and like, at that point, by that point, my father was long gone.
Yeah.
So the impact wasn't as great as if it were, if I were adopted at 6, for instance, which
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so at 12, so they waited, obviously.
Yeah.
They
Why
didn't.
did they wait? And why did he decide to adopt you? I mean, do you know why at that point they decided to do that?
I can only speculate, Melissa, that they wanted to just seal the deal from
Mm,
keeping my father uh, away from us, from my brothers.
yeah. How did
And
all this affect your relationship with your mom?
I was disappointed. I she was aloof. She wasn't emotionally available.
Was she before? Do you remember before with your dad?
She
Was
was,
she?
yeah, she was. There were times in Paris in our home that we had our electricity turned off because we didn't pay the bills. So there's that. She was probably in scarcity mindset
Hmm.
and was just concerned about feeding her kids and
Yeah.
getting paid. And my dad, my father, uh, you know, because he was self-employed and was an artist. He didn't have like a job, job
Hmm.
per se. So he worked with beautiful, intricate jewelry. I mean,
Man.
5, 10, $20,000 worth of pieces that he would do for very wealthy people. But I think that was probably some of the reasons for the arguments in the home that I heard.
Yeah.
And I was never told, "Hey, this isn't about you," because I was taking it on. Like it's like, God, what did I do wrong?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Did you find anything out when you visited your dad's wife after
Yeah.
he passed? What did she
Well,
tell
he
you?
always he always what she told me is like I was. He always felt that I would be in good hands. I don't know if that was a cop out,
Yeah.
but she actually, it was interesting, and I was like taken aback. But she said, "Why didn't you find it?" I mean, she got angry with me.
Mm.
She said, "Why didn't you seek out your father?" And I like, "Whoa, Iris, step back." I did. I did try.
Yeah.
You know, and it was interesting with some mutual friends who live in Tiburon, over
Hmm.
other part of Marin, and my godmother who was friends with my mom, since they were like in college, and she lived back east. And I saw, I mean, before she passed away, I saw her. She came to California and visited, and God, my only regret is never having asked her,
Mm.
"Did you know where?" Because she was very good friends with my father as
Oh,
well,
wow. Yeah.
and I never got to ask her. And maybe, and again, speculation. My mom may have told her, "Hey, Dusty, don't tell Jean-Pierre or Kino
Right.
about Bert," you know. So I won't. I don't know now. So,
Yeah.
but it's like I realized that it's made me. It's all these tests and all these things that reoccur, like me being a father, and I'm estranged from my son right now.
Mm.
Which it's like that really
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
and so I'm very cognizant of that. And he's up in Hillsburg, he's not far away,
Mm,
but he's angry with me, and um, I do reach out, even if
yeah.
it's return my. He's 35, but
Wow.
he hasn't returned my calls right now. But
Yeah.
I feel like there's some things that I still have a lot of work to do around this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so the more that I do it, I think the more energetically he's going to
Yeah.
notice that.
Yeah. I was estranged from my son for a while after my divorce, and um because I think he was looking at me and saying, "Who's this woman?" Like, because I was finally coming into my own and living an authentic life, and but I was a stranger to him. He didn't know that person.
Mhm.
And so for a good 10 years probably we did not have, you
How
know,
old is he?
he's 31 now.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So now we have somewhat, a relationship. We'll go out to dinner and, we'll talk, but nothing on a regular basis. But yeah, it was I felt like I was playing a part all those years, and that's all he knew, but that really wasn't me. So it took a while for him to come around and accept that this is who mom is.
Yeah.
So hang in there with that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride. There are moments where we love to cook together,
Yeah.
and it's just interesting. That's the one thing that my mother and I connected on through food, through cooking, which is
Mm,
probably part of the reason why I care for people through food and through some of the other things that I do.
yeah.
That it's about nurturing, and
Hmm.
it's also like a way to like have a sense of being available to my mom
Right.
in the
Having
kitchen.
that connection, having a connection somehow. Yeah. Did you notice, like your brother, did he have any problems with anything that was going
Oh
on?
yeah,
I know he was younger, right? So,
he was going through his own stuff around it as well,
yeah.
issues.
And
And
how was your relationship together? I mean, going through all this.
yeah, we've we were we were fairly close, and he was the one who actually told me. He did the research to find out where Iris was,
Mm,
and he went and visited her first before I did, and then finally I went ahead and did that myself on my no, not we didn't go together. He was in well, he was in Oregon at the time, I think, because he eventually moved to San Diego. Um, and but
after your
yeah, it was
dad was
after
already gone. Yeah.
the fact. But and interesting, we don't we don't. He's shut me out of his life right now.
Wow.
I'm not entirely sure why, but it has something to do with before my parents were in hospice and they passed away in 2020,
Mm,
and he was caretaking for them, even though they were in a
yeah.
skilled nursing.
Facility. Hmm.
Yeah. But he felt like he needed to be there, so he was on a mission to do that. And last time I saw my folks and him was in um, the March of 2019. But I've never, um, he's never reached out to me. Well, he texted me that my mother died.
Oh, wow.
So
Texted you.
texted me.
Wow.
I mean, I got to speak. It was beautiful though, is that I got to. She was in Maryland, and so she wasn't able to talk, but she could hear me and understand. So I actually got to say goodbye to her over Zoom,
Oh, wow.
and I sang her favorite song
Mm,
and just said, I said, Mom, you can go now. You can let go. It's okay.
yeah.
You've done the best you could in your life. You've done all that you needed to do. You're free to go. Go. You have
Mm,
my blessing. And then
yeah.
a few days later, she passed.
Wow.
So that was great. you know, I'm glad I had that opportunity to share that with her. And and through SMGI, I've also connected with my father. So
Hmm.
I've gotten some resolution there, and
Wow.
um,
Nice.
so that's been an amazing journey. That part of it.
Yeah, that was my next question. So, what has helped you personally in dealing with adoption trauma and, anything else that you've dealt with growing up and even as an adult? What have you tried? What's worked and
Yeah.
what
So
hasn't worked?
yeah, right. So so when we moved to different countries, we would have 3 or 4 year tenures in these countries. So move, uproot, move, settle,
Yeah.
uproot. So I kind of got used to it. And it got harder. I felt as I moved, as we continued to move, and even when I lived in San Francisco when I went to San Francisco State, I was moving around the city. I was doing a micro of the macro.
Wow.
It was nuts. It
Yeah.
was nuts. Like it's like wow. Was that trauma response a repeat?
Oh, yeah.
Repeat.
Yeah. Becomes a
Um,
habit.
so to answer your question, I did some traditional psychotherapy, psychology.
Hmm.
I've done Gestalt, breath work, um, uh, family constellation work, um, and then of course SMGI, somatic mindful guided imagery, which to me
Hmm.
is light years ahead of all these other protocols that I've done. They've all supported me and helped me. Um, the family constellation is really interesting, and it's got its own unique way, own unique protocols. However, and I've done medicine work too, plant medicine work. Um, so I feel like, and then and I also I went through the Mankind Project. It's a men's organization where I went through a initiation weekend and was able to uh, uh, connect to some of my father issues there. That
Mm.
was great
Yeah.
with other men and
Yeah.
having a safe container in which to do that.
Hmm.
But SMGI for me has really uh, it's a laser pointed the issues that I was holding on to, the trauma that was coursing through me through my being. That has really supported me in connecting with my inner wisdom, my those parts of me that you know were waving their hands. Hey,
You forgot
I'm
about
here.
me.
Whoa! And it used to be like I go visit these parts, but then I would leave them, and they like, "You're just gonna leave me here? Say hello and goodbye. That's it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
love them and leave them."
Right.
That's what it felt like.
Right. So, what breakthroughs, what have you released or been able
Oh,
to kind of come to terms with? And
well, a lot of things. What I released is the feeling that the barriers that I put around myself about my own self worth and that I mattered.
That's
I,
huge.
I do matter,
Yeah.
and I am worthy of who I am, even though that was never, really drummed into me, or that was never really. I felt like I didn't matter at all,
Hmm.
and felt like I was powerless and helpless to do anything. So those parts of me, the little boys, they're different ages. Six.
Yeah.
I worked with my 6-year-old part, my 8-year-old part, 12-year-old, teenager part, um, adult. My future self has also come in. I mean, it's really amazing the resources that are available to me to really support me in like coming to terms with and clearing those things that were incomplete.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've seen in clients that you've helped with SMGI? Anything stand out? Anyone, client?
what's beautiful is noticing when the journeyers, the clients are connecting to those parts and just loving them up, welcoming them home. It's like it really is like an initiation on the part of the journeyer to, that part had been sent out, fragmented, and now it's like time to bring that part home.
Hmm.
And then just like in the traditional tribal traditions, the village would be waiting there to welcome that part, to welcome that person home,
Yeah.
transformed, changed,
Yeah.
altered. It's like welcome back to the village, and that's what it feels like to me. It's like, and to me, it just thrills me to witness that, to be a part of that, really, because I'm, in some parts, in some ways, I'm also part of, I'm their Sherpa, I'm the guide, and
Hmm.
I'm fully present with where my clients are in their journey, and to really just witness and to celebrate with them the homecoming of the parts that have, been, um, fragmented for a long time.
Yeah. That's
And just,
played out in some of my journeys at the end, having I have a lot of indigenous journeys. And at the end, it's like everybody's there dancing and celebrating and just like, you know, with
so
all the whole get up on all the feathers and just all the
yeah,
war paint and everything and just like
yeah.
really
That's
celebrating
why
that.
we do it in the outer world. It's a
Yeah.
reflection of the inner world,
Yeah.
right? So I'm just, I feel so juiced when when I see the triumph, the breakthroughs that my clients have.
Yeah. The other amazing thing is you go through the journey and you maybe do an etheric plane communication with someone or, and you get all that off your chest in a safe way. And
Yeah,
um, just the relief. I mean, I was amazed at how much that load came off of me and has stayed off of me just by
yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
So powerful.
EPC, etheric plane communication, is very much a powerful tool in SMGI.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so basically, whatever aggressor or whatever part that represents, what activates you, you know, they don't say anything. They're like tied up or whatever because this inner world, anything can happen,
Yep.
and then you just let them have it, and
Yeah. Let
you
loose.
just, yeah. I mean, I've done many EPC. Like the hair club for men. I'm also a client.
That's great.
I
You need to make a
smile,
commercial about that.
right, right. So I journey too because it's important for me to have that experience on that end of it,
Yeah.
so that I know when my clients go through what they go through, it's like yes, you know,
Well, I want people to know that it's a journey. It's never a destination. You're always peeling the onion, and learning and changing and evolving and creating new beliefs and shedding old ones. And it's just a process that's
yeah,
continual. And so, yeah, it's very important that the, guide gets guided as well.
so important. And because we're are in the same cohort, the 6-month cohort, the training for SMGI. And it's my third time around to get the most benefit possible. Um, we have as students, we have the benefit of supporting each other with guiding and being guided, and
Yeah.
that has been really beneficial for me in my work with clients to have that um, ability and the opportunity to do that. So that because I'm always looking to better myself
Mm-hmm. Too.
and to really step into this world, this journey, um, and to support others and having their own
Exactly.
agency to
Yeah.
create uh, their own lives the way that they want to. I say with peace, with ease, and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
That's And like you said, it's a continual peeling back of the
Yeah.
layers, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you know, I I break through one thing, and then there's another that is there. It's like, oh, I'm ready now.
Yep.
Yes. Me,
Yeah.
my turn, my turn.
Right.
Yeah, and it's great
Yeah.
because now, like, we have the tools to
Right.
do that, to work with that.
Yeah. That's also my heart too, is if I find something that works for me, I want to share it. And, I always say everybody's healing combination is different, but this might be one of the numbers that's your combination. And if it works for me, I'd like to bring it and see if it's your part of your combination as well. I just see that SMGI marks a lot of boxes that under what adoptees need, it checks a lot of those boxes. And so I really think that it's going to be very helpful. And I'm so glad that you're coming on the show because I know it's number one, it's hard to find men that want to talk about their adoption experience.
Really. Mm.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
percentage? What
Oh
percentage
my gosh.
do
I
you think?
would say 1%.
Oh,
Well, maybe like five. I don't know. Not often. I've probably had three or four men on the show.
oh,
It's usually
interesting.
women.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of these men, like you were just saying when you went to that men's retreat, how you kind of have that camaraderie and that kind of connection right away. I believe that there's a lot of adoptee men that would love to connect with you
Yeah,
because you're an adoptee with SMGI and that's
and a
helpful
man.
and a man.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm really glad that you're coming on and we're going to have all your links in the show notes, but you also do some other stuff too. What else?
Interesting.
What else do you have going on? You're a chef.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I've been a personal chef for 30 some odd years, the hospitality industry. I've also uh, been a poet for over 40 years. Um, I had a great experience with in the school that I went to in Washington D.C., where the founder uh, and director Elizabeth Ely was my hero, and she uh, said to me one day, said, I see you having, and being this withdrawn person that I was,
Mhm.
I found an outlet through writing. And she said, I see you enjoy writing, and you may want to try poetry. It may be of benefit to you. And she said it exactly like that. She didn't.
Yeah.
She just offered it to me, and it was up to me to take it or leave it,
Hmm.
which was beautiful. And of course, I did. And so, I've self-published a couple of books, and the first one I dedicated to Elizabeth,
Oh, wow.
an homage to, you know, the existential angst that I was going through at the time,
Hmm.
and was able to, express some of those feelings. So that was a kind of therapy for me too.
Yeah. And a lot of adoptees are doing the same thing. There's a lot of writing conferences
Yeah,
and things, and just people coming out with books. And right
yeah,
now, that's really a big deal, is getting it out on paper.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Whatever works to
Hmm.
support one in, you know, because when we're dealing with anything that uh, disturbs the force, if you will, within us, whether it's emotions or trauma, whatever it is, it's beautiful because it's a way for our bodies or our beingness to inform us, like, hey, this, you may want to pay attention to this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So we have so many ways in which that surfaces, right? So that's the beauty of being a human being and being, soul incarnated, and it's part of my worldview,
Yeah.
uh, into the human form. It's like, wow, we have all these great opportunities to heal ourselves, to support us, and so I would say, like, any trauma, whether it's around adoption or just abuse, and you know, I, I've spoken with um, a lot of people, some friends of mine who were adopted, and they've expressed that how difficult that was for them.
Hmm.
And I've listened to some of your shows, your podcasts with some of the people that you've interviewed, and it seems to be a common um, foundation, or underlying current feeling. It's like, yeah, it's it's there's a being in this world is a little wonky.
Mm-hmm. It
It
can be.
can be, right.
Yeah.
So I would just say that, to me, this work has certainly addressed. Uh, I think, and maybe you and I did a journey where that came up, the adoption came up. I'm trying to
I
think.
don't think we did.
Did
I
we?
don't think we have yet.
That was one of the other
Yeah.
students,
Yeah.
but it did come up. So that was
Good.
interesting because what came up was I had an etheric plane communication with my stepdad,
Oh,
which was really, in a way,
wow.
different than ones I've had before. And I really let it loose. I think it was with Sanjeev.
Mm,
I really let it loose, and I felt a complete lightness of being.
yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
certain, like,
That's been my favorite part so far is the etheric plane communication. I get so much out of that. So much out of that.
and I
It's
get so
awesome.
much of it out of it as well, being the guide.
Yeah.
Guide someone who,
Yeah.
like, I'm like, I'm rooting for them. It's like, yes, yes,
Yep. Yeah.
say, feel, express what you need to feel. I mean, I
Yep.
do that in the language we use, but I'm just like, cheerleading on the side and witnessing it, and of course, having your inner allies there to witness and to come celebrate with you afterwards is amazing,
Yeah.
an amazing
Right.
experience too. And one of the things that Gina talks about is honoring the experience
Mm-hmm.
and the experiencer.
Yeah.
Again, that's part of that homecoming and so forth. I also do what's called biogeometry, which is a developed by Ibrahim Karim, who's an Egyptian architect and scientist. And it's a way it's using certain tools, pendulums, specifically designed vibrational pendulums to uh, detect subtle energies,
Interesting.
and both beneficial and detrimental. And then
Mm.
there are ways in which to harmonize people, places, and things that I do. So depending on the client, if they're open to that, I'll make a suggestion, and then just, of course, invite them to feel and ask their inner wisdom if that's going to support them.
Yeah.
That's the thing I love about SMGI. It's about agency. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling them what to do. I'm
Right.
just telling them, how does that feel for you? Is that something you'd like to do? So
Yeah.
they get to say yes or no,
Right.
which is great.
Yeah.
Then the other, so that's something that's been really amazing to me, because I harmonize homes and, people and places, things, and it's people have uh, who are very sensitive noticed a shift, a difference.
Wow.
They feel like
Yeah.
more harmony in their space. There are multiple ways to do it, but this is one where I can empirically test if, like for EMF, I can test if
Okay.
certain
Mm-hmm.
tools that are utilized will, the EMF is still there, but it's transmuted into beneficial energy,
Oh,
which is,
wow.
and
Interesting.
Dr. Karim has done lots of tests in Switzerland. He's uh, worked in some of these small villages where they had cell towers erected that affected people who were very sensitive, environmentally sensitive. And
Mm.
so he um, used some of these tools to transmute this energy, and then people were able to, come out of their basements. Those who were really sensitive.
Yeah.
Birds and bats came back to the area after
Oh, wow.
being gone for a year.
Wow.
So this stuff actually works. It does work.
Can you do that remotely?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would need a witness of someone. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
I could just like if you were to give me send me a photograph of you, I can, print it out and then I can use that as a witness. So it has
Okay.
a quantum effect.
Mm-hmm.
What happens here, it happens there. It happens
Yeah.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's been really great and then just finding out the results.
Yeah.
Um, I also um, do kind of shamanic type healing, energy work, clearing people of uh, entities. Um, it, may, it may sound probably a little woo woo, but it really does work. One of our classmates expressed she couldn't sleep in her room, and so she was in her roommate's room for a long time. And then she said, Is there something we can do?" And so what was interesting about that is I incorporated SMGI. She was in London, and so in a very old building, and apparently she found out that there were World War II nurses that were there and were stuck there. So what we did was we just, some of the shamanic traditions, they do, very hyperbolic banishment.
Yeah.
You know.
Kind of dramatic. Yeah.
I mean, that it may be appropriate in some instances, but
Hmm.
most of these entities, they just want to move on.
Yeah.
We opened the portal of light and invited it, but we thanked the, and I had her work with me. We did this together
That's cool.
to, and it's thank you for your service, and would you like to? We invited them
Hmm.
to move on, and they did. And
Yeah.
what was interesting, as soon as after we did it for it was this one particular entity. There was like
Then a bunch came.
6 or 7 that were lining up
Yeah.
also to go.
Yeah.
So we did the whole lot, closed the portal, cleared, and then we
Yeah.
tested the space, and it was fine. And so I asked her, I said, just let me know what you notice when you are back sleeping in your space.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, she reported that she had no problem sleeping.
Wow. It's awesome.
So some of that I could incorporate in
Hmm.
SMGI, and we actually used a little SMGI with
Yeah.
this of part of the soul that was still a thought form
Right.
that lingered, and so we invited the thought form to move on.
Interesting. That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that stuff. I love all that woo woo stuff.
Well, you know what? It works, and
Yeah.
it's time for, and I feel like in our world today, this is coming out of the closet more and more and more and more mainstream.
Yeah.
For me, if it works, I'm going to use it.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I don't care what people
Yeah.
think. If it seems woo woo.
Yeah. Well, I
So
was sensitive to spirits when I was, ever since I can remember. And I kind of squelched it for a long time. And then I was still in the closet, but I was doing it on, without anybody knowing. So I was like sensitive in a ghost hunting group and, stuff like that. And it was so much fun. I loved
yeah,
it. And now I'm totally out of the closet. So I'm like, yeah.
yay! You and I both. Yeah. So
So
to me, that's the beauty of SMGI is the that we have the ability to incorporate other tools and other protocols to
yeah,
support us, and
yeah,
and ultimately, like I want I want people to feel better, to do
yeah,
better, to have the kind of experiences that they want. I mean,
right.
including myself.
Yeah. So where can people find you? Where can we talk to
Oh,
you and hire you and all that good stuff?
yeah. So, typically, the sessions are 1.5 to 2 hours, and I work over Zoom, on phone or in person. I have an office in Sausalito, and it's where on Sunday or Saturdays and Mondays I'm available in person there. Uh, and SMGI works beautifully over Zoom as much as it is in person. I'm finding a lot of people prefer it in person,
Hmm.
but Zoom really works well. The
Yeah,
job gets done
right.
regardless.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have a website. It's innerworldjourneys.com, and I have a whole bunch of information on there that where you can find out about what I do and how I can support you, and yeah, check it out.
Awesome. Well, again, I just want to thank you for coming on and, having that male perspective, and hopefully it encourages other males to come on and tell their stories.
Yeah,
So important. So I know that there's going to be listeners that are going to say me too from just listening to your story. And it's a unique story. So I know there's a lot of people feeling kind of alone having that later adoption experience. So
yeah.
thanks
And
so
I want to
much
work
for,
with men. I work with anyone, of
yeah,
course, but I
yeah,
I feel like there's a niche for me to work with men.
definitely. Yeah.
And one of our other classmates, and there are only two men
Mhm.
in our class, Sanjeev and I, and he has gone through MKP, and he and I are looking to collaborate on creating a group for men utilizing
Nice.
SMGI
Nice.
group group setting.
Perfect.
More on that later.
Yeah.
I'll have more on that as that
Awesome.
develops. But part of part of my journey and my mission is to support men in their work. And it's like you said. There's very few men that are um, doing this work. I mean,
Yeah.
this SMGI is really starting to blossom. It's budding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think the more men that come out, it's giving other men permission to talk about
yeah,
their experience too. So,
yeah. And
so
I
important.
welcome all you men out there.
So important.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on today.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and a blessing to have you as a fellow SMGIer.
Same. Thanks.
All right.
I just love Jean-Pierre's story so much because it's different than what we normally hear. And I know that there's listeners out there that are going to benefit from hearing his story because it is their story too. And the other perspective that I wanted to kind of highlight from Jean-Pierre's story is he was 12 years old when he was adopted by his stepfather. And really wasn't consulted on if that was what he wanted. And it's one thing as being adopted as a baby where you really had your rights signed away and were helpless to stand up for yourself, where Jean-Pierre was 12 years old and still felt helpless in having a say on being adopted. He didn't have a say on never seeing his father again. He didn't have a say about leaving his homeland of France and moving somewhere strange and didn't know the language. And then I just can't imagine finding out that your father was sending you gifts and you just were never given them because it was inconvenient for your parents. But what I want you to know is, and what I want you to get out of this interview today is, it is possible to heal from adoption trauma. It is possible to let go of anger and sadness and grief and loss. It's never too late to live your best life. And if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you have tried 1,000 things and they have not worked, do not give up on finding your winning healing combination. Don't give up. You were not put on this earth to live a life of misery and sorrow. You were put here for a purpose. And that purpose is magic. And that magic was meant to be shared with the world. You have the innate power to be your own hero. Stop looking outside of yourself for the answers. They're already inside of you. And if anything that I have said in the last couple of minutes is intriguing you, get in touch with me or Jean-Pierre and find out more about SMGI. It is gentle, it is profound, and it is potentially life-changing. Jean-Pierre and my website links are in the show notes. Please check it out. If you have any questions, please email me at mindyourownkarma@gmail.com, and I will answer any questions you have about myself, the podcast, SMGI. And if you want to come on the podcast, that is where you can get in touch with me for that. It is time to educate the world, and I can't do it without you and your stories. So get in touch with me. And last but not least, take what you need and leave what you don't. And always remember to mind your own karma. I'll see you next time.